Hello again, everybody. It's your old pal Guardian Enzo coming to you live on tape from Kyoto, as always, with yet another Lost in Anime season preview. And it's summertime. Summer is not traditionally a great anime season. But that's been changing in recent years. And one thing I will say is summer used to be a smaller anime season. Summer and winter used to be quite a bit smaller than spring and fall in terms of sheer number of series. And as such, just by the law of averages, you were less likely to get a bunch of really good ones. But that's really flattened out. There's so much overproduction going on, and production capacity is so tapped. And I think we all know the reasons behind it. But um, so 52 to 54 series, depending on your count. I include ONAs there. I think spring had 54, and so 52, 53. We're right on the same number. It's also right where we were last summer. We had 54 shows. So nothing really much has changed there. So you pretty much getting every anime season these days is 50 shows plus, 10 to 15 light novel adaptations. We've got 4 shows this season just with isekai in the title. These things are not going to change. I mean, you get unicorn seasons like last spring, which might have been the third or fourth best anime season in my estimation of all time, and maybe the best ever for rom-com, probably the best ever. But those are unusual. This one is looking more typical summer, typical 2024, kind of mid, really. But we'll get into that as we go down the line and look at the different things that we have on offer, which are quite a few. I'm previewing on this one 16 out of 52 or 3, depending on the count. We've had one show delayed, and then 1 or 2 kind of got added in late. So my usual number is a third. In a really good season, I was over 40% last spring. This time I'm a little under 30%, so it's not hugely off my usual percentage, but it's lower, and I think that kind of reflects the quality of this season. As I said, mid is kind of the theme for me in 2024. Maybe that's even charitable, and summer really plays into that. So the usual ground rules apply here. I do, of course, the print preview on the website, and that is a little more breadth. It goes into everything in less detail. Here, I'm going to focus more on the shows that I'm really interested in, and so there won't be as much broad coverage of everything in the preview. But the shows that I want to talk about, I'm going to talk about in a little more depth. So breadth on the website, depth in the video, and we'll get right into it with the first. There's not a lot of sequels this season that are really key shows for me, but the top series on the list for me is, and that's Sengoku Youko, Senma Konton-hen. So Sengoku Youko, if you followed me, the preview from the first season in winter, or if you're a fan of the manga, or, basically, this is not counting Biscuit Hammer, which was an atrocity. Really, this was the first Mizukami Satoshi anime adaptation that really mattered. The nature of this series is what we got in the first core was a prequel, and the rest of the series is the main story. I mean, that's kind of a spoiler, but it isn't really. I think that was pretty obvious by the end of the first core. So they split it, and the split, as it looks like, it's going to be the one core, and then this second split is going to be the rest of the series, which should be around 25 episodes. So I guess in hindsight, if they were going to do a split core, that is kind of the logical way to do it. In effect, there are 3 main arcs of the story, and they're each about 1 core long as they're adapted. But there's more continuity, I think, between the second 2 than between the first one and the second 2. So I kind of understand why they did this. So this series should be with us in the summer and the fall. Both of these upcoming cores, major arcs, are better than the first arc for me, the World Justice Siblings arc, which I like very much, but the next two arcs are definitely better. And of the three, in my humble estimation, this arc upcoming, starting in summer, is the Senma Konton-hen is the best arc of the series and one of the best arcs in the entire Mizukami catalog, which is a pretty freaking high bar, I'll tell you that. I really, really love. I love everything about this season. I'm not going to go too much into spoiler details, but Senya is, he is the main character at this point in the story, and you get a little taste of him as a character in the first core, but he really comes into his own here, and his arc is amazing. One of the best character arcs in manga, and a great raft of supporting characters, some of whom we've already been introduced to, some of whom we have not. So I would say probably of the 10 best characters in the series, I think maybe five have yet to be introduced, I would say. And a couple of them really only even joined the party late in the first course. So really it's going to be a big change from the first season, but for the better. Um, I was disappointed not to see this series get a better reception from English speaking fans, but it didn't shock me, because it's very old school and very untrendy, and Mizukami is those things. And this is just, it's not anime fantasy the way anime fantasy looks in 2024. So for most people, it was always going to be a tough sell. But for those of us who love the Water God, it was worth the wait. It's not a lights out spectacular adaptation the way Heavenly Delusion was, but it's still pretty darn good. And considering they were working with, relatively speaking, the weakest third of the story, I think they did fine in the first core. I think the casting is good, the music was good, and now the series is just, now it takes off. Now it was a good series, and it becomes, for me, a great series. So that is absolutely my number one pick. That's leads my highest expectations category. And if you're new to the Guardian Enzo experience, my season previews are always highest expectations, mid table, and modestly interested. And you can usually have a good indication of what I think of a season by how many things fall under each of those buckets. This season, we've only got two shows in the highest expectations category and another six in the mid-table, which is not too bad. And then half of them in modestly interested is a larger percentage than I would like, but it is what it is. The other highest expectation series is Nige Jouzu no Wakagimi, or the Elusive Samurai, a Shonen Jump series that I like probably better than most, judging by the sales and the the volume rankings and the polls and such, the table of contents. This is by Matsui Yusei, who is best known to most as the author of Assassination Classroom, which was an absolute monster hit. And I personally feel that The Elusive Samurai is a better series than Assassination Classroom in every sense that means anything. But it's a big change of pace, and I think when you have a series as successful as Ass Class was, and you go radically differently as he did, you're going to piss off a lot of people, and I think that's basically what it is. And this series was always going to get an anime. It does well enough to get an anime. It's a weekly Jump series. It does well enough to get an anime. It does well enough to not to face the risk of cancellation. Not to mention that Matsui has quite a bit of influence now after producing that huge hit in Assassination Classroom. So this is the story of Hojo Tokiyuki, who is don't read up on your Japanese history if you don't want to be spoiled, because the major tentpole events are taken from Japanese history, so you will find out what happens to all the characters and when, if you read up on it. In the interim, of course, the details are radically changed. Matsui loves the magical realism, and there's definitely some fantasy elements to this now. It's full of his I say it's a big change from Assassination Classroom, but it is full of his signature anachronistic humor, which some people like better than others. It's also full of absolutely gorgeous artwork. I personally think Matsui is one of the best artists working in manga today. Not everybody likes him as a manga artist. I feel like his paneling, it really looks like almost like classical paintings that have been adapted to the manga page. So it doesn't have a lot of depth in the 3D sense. They're very flat images, but very beautiful images. It really does look like you're in an art museum in a way, and he draws absolutely gorgeous characters, and especially children. His character designs are beautiful, both girls and boys, and men and women. All of his characters are beautiful, and the ones that are ugly are beautiful and are ugly in a beautiful way. And I really love Tokiyuki as a main character. The gist of it with him is his family was betrayed and most of them killed, and he's always been very good at things like running away and hiding. And he uses that skill. Thus, he is the elusive samurai, and basically uses that skill to survive and eventually to try to reclaim his legacy. Um, and again, it's a series that has not resonated necessarily with a huge audience, but I personally think it's great. It's not perfect, it's not flawless. There's some weak moments there, but on balance, I think Nige Jouzu no Wakagimi is really a good series. This is being done by Cloverworks, uh, who have a bit of a mixed track record, but they seem to have put a really, really strong team behind this. They have some big time producers and animators involved, and the previews look great, frankly. So I think they're going to do this justice. I think it would be a shame to see this series not adapted in a beautiful way, and because it is beautiful. Whatever you think of the story, I think the artwork is really beautiful. So it looks good. I have a suspicion that this is going to be a very, very solid adaptation. And now onto the mid-table, and here there's a lot of shots in the dark for me, really. But I called them mid-table because I have, at least some expectations for them. And the first on that list is Giji Harem, which is my top sleeper of the season. It's a rom com about a high school kid who's in the drama club, who's desperate to be popular with girls. So he gets his kohai in the club to help him out, and she uses her acting skills to portray a bunch of different girls who are supposedly interested in him. And naturally, of course, she's in love with him herself. So this is one I don't know anything about the manga really, and I know that the studio Nomad is not a guarantor of success by any stretch of the imagination. But I hear good things mostly about the manga, and I just have a vibe that this is going to be a really good rom com. That's Giji Harem. Next one on that category I want to talk is Shoushimin. Shoushimin Series is the official name. Series is part of the name. And the main thing here is it's Yonezawa Honobu, who is the author of Hyoka, which is the most beautiful series KyoAni ever did, and one of the most beautiful series in anime history, and one that, while it had some clunkers when it was at its best, to me was a really deep and really subtle and really profound series, which are words I don't get a chance to use very often when it comes to anime. So if we get that from Shoushimin, I'll be very happy. It's not Kyoto Animation. There's actually some rumors that Yonezawa is upset with Kyoto Animation over the Hyoka adaptation or something in the aftermath of it. I don't know what about the adaptation itself he could possibly be upset about, or even if this is true. But in any event, we all know that Kyoto Animation prefers to adapt things that they own lock, stock, and barrel anyway, so I think Hyoka was an exception rather than the rule for them. People have been pleading for a second season of that, but I'm kind of given up that we'll ever see it. So this may be the closest thing we ever get. It is by Lappin Track, which is the studio that did Undead Girl Murder Farce. So I think in Undead Girl Murder Farce, they proved that they can do really, really good work. And they also have done some other very good series like Wotaku and Sarazanmai. and they like working with big name directors. Kanbei Mamoru is a big name director. Not as big as Watanabe, who directed Undead Girl Murder Farce, but still pretty big and very talented. So even though it's not Kyoto Animation, I have a pretty strong feeling that Shoushimin, in and of itself, the English title, by the way, is How to Become Ordinary. I have a suspicion it's going to get a very, very good adaptation at the very least. So my expectations are pretty high, just because of the Hyoka connection. The story-wise, two high school kids who try to live ordinary lives and extraordinary things happen to them. It sounds kind of Hyoka-ish in a way, to be honest. But so I don't know anything about the source material other than knowing who the author is. So again, just because of that connection, and because anime based on novels have a better chance statistically of being really good than ones based on manga, and way, way better than ones based on light novels. So they have a good batting average. I'm hopeful there. I should also point out that in this category, I also had Kijin Gentoushou, which was going to be a mid-cable show and a sleeper for me, but that was delayed till winter 2025. Yokohama Animation Lab is having some serious production issues from what the rumors say. So we'll skip past that to Rising Impact, which is the next series to surf the wave of golf anime. Sadly, we won't be getting a Green Greens anime because just a couple days before I recorded this, Green Greens was canceled by Weekly Shonen Jump, which I knew was going to happen, but it still pisses me off because I think it was really great. I don't know a lot about Rising Impact, except that it is by the author of Nanatsu no Taizai, Suzuki Nakaba. It's about a 20-year-old series. In fact, it ended more than 20 years ago. It was in Weekly Shonen Jump. And it was successful enough that it probably would have gotten an anime if it was not a golf series, or if he'd written it after he did Nanatsu no Taizai. So it's another case, and we've seen a lot of these of older series, kind of long forgotten in many cases, getting revived in anime form, sometimes to better effect than others, although I would say, generally speaking, I like the trend. I'm not a huge fan of Nanatsu no Taizai, but I hear good things about Rising Impact. So, we'll see. It's a Netflix production. It's an odd premiere. It's starting June 22nd, so just a few days after this video goes live. We'll see. It's about a kid from the country who loves baseball. His name is Gawain. He gets introduced with golf, falls in love with the game, and ends up going to the big city, which in Japan inevitably means Tokyo, to pursue the game. So we'll see. Netflix usually puts enough money into a series so that it at least looks decent. With a sports series, that's always nice. Next up is Senpai wa Otokonoko, or Senpai wa Otokonoko. Until I see it, I won't know which pronunciation to use. If you know, you know. This is a series about a boy who dresses as a girl. A girl falls for him thinking he's a girl, and then when she finds out he's a guy, she's even more into it. It's maybe a dramatic rom-com, a romance drama with comedy, or a romance comedy with drama. The preview looks good, and I've heard pretty good things about the manga. By a pretty new studio, Project Number 9, with nobody huge on the staff. But again, it's interesting enough that I think there could be something there. Ramen Akaneko, Red Cat Ramen, another studio I'd basically never heard of, E&H Production. The only thing I know that they were the production studio on was Ninja Kamui, which looked pretty good, although I wasn't a big fan of the story. That was direct to Cartoon Network, if you're not aware of it. So this is a relatively high-profile manga adaptation. Red Cat Ramen has sold pretty well. It's in Jump Plus. It's about a ramen shop that's run by cats. Okay, I just think that's a suspend your disbelief thing, but I love ramen and I love cats, so I guess in that sense, it's like, well, hey, let's give it a shot. And there's a reporter who's a dog person, and she goes there to do a story on it, and she tells the manager that she's a dog person, and he hires her to work there. I don't know. It sounds pretty random, but I've heard the manga is pretty good, so I kind of have an interesting I think that'll be pretty interesting anyway. And the last one in the mid-table category this season is Katsute Mahou Shoujo to Aku wa Tekitai shiteita. Mainly here because it's Bones. It has a long title, and with a title that long, it should be a light novel adaptation, but it's not. It is a manga. This one is about the leader of an evil organization trying to conquer the Earth, and it sounds almost like Mr. Villain's Day Off, doesn't it? Falls in love with a Mahou shoujo who's trying to stop him. It's not a series that checks a lot of my conventional boxes, but it would get into the preview anyway because it's Bones, and the fact that it's Bones and it has an author of the original work is Fujiwara Koko, who of course was the mangaka of Inu X Boko SS or Inu Boko SS, which is another series that on paper I wouldn't have thought I would like and end up liking very much. She died extremely young, and I get the sense that that the studio is taking this project on as kind of a way of honoring her, and which that worked with Migi Todali, which was a very good, very heartfelt adaptation, and that may work here too. So because it's Bones and because it's Fujiwara and the whole story behind that, I kind of have a semi-sleeper vibe with this one. Okay, that's mid-table. We'll take a quick flyby of the modestly interested category. Tower of God, Kaminoto second season. The manhwa at its best, which I like the best among all manhwa, however, completely jumps the shark. However, the second season, although this season is going to be too core, should cover material that's mostly still in the area when the series is good. It introduces my favorite character in the series, which is a plus. I call him Manwa Killua. You know who he is if you know the series. It's the first season was very indifferent in terms of production, so I kind of expect the same here. But there's enough good material there that I'm kind of semi-interested in that. You can't ignore Oshinoko Season 2 because it's the closest thing to a new kaiju series we had in the interim between Spy Family and Free Ren. So it didn't quite reach the Spy Family level, but Oshinoko certainly did become a huge commercial monster. I really liked the 4-episode prequel movie. After that, there were some interesting episodes. By the end of it, I was checked out and kind of disinterested. So I go into this season with pretty low expectations. I do kind of feel like Akasaka, the author, like most people who write about the idol mafia and the Japanese entertainment industry and fandom, they end up being apologists for it rather than, really criticizing the Japanese celebrity culture. So he pulled his punches, he chickened out. I kind of expected it though, so it didn't surprise me. If I'm able to stick with the second season in terms of coverage, I'll be surprised. But I'd like to be pleasantly surprised because there was enough about the first season that its highs were pretty high. And it's a very nice production by Dogakoba too, I might add. This Shikanoko Nokonoko Koshitantan, about a girl who gets a best friend who used to be a deer. My dear friend. Okay. This one sounds just so random that I get the feeling it may be random just for the sake of being random. But by My Dear Friend Nokotan, by the way, is the English title on this. However, the director of this thing is Ota Masahiko, who is one of the greatest comedy directors in anime history. He directed Minami K, the first and best season, Mitsudo Moe. Really, really excellent comedy chops. Has not directed much in recent years, so I'm interested in it for that reason. It could be inspired lunacy, or it could be forced, and I won't know until we've seen a couple of episodes. But Ota directing it certainly has my interest piqued. Nothing else much in this category that really jumps out at me. Atri, My Dear Moments had a nice preview, but I'm not super keen on visual novel adaptations as a rule. Koneko no Chi's Sweet Home. There's another season of that coming. It'll be 100% CGI. If it's full length for Chi, which is 12 minutes, then it could be good. I've enjoyed every season. As a cat person, I think the Chi series have all gotten that part of it pretty accurately, apart from the fact that they don't actually talk in real life. So, if that's not a 3-minute short, if it's like half length, we could see something possibly worthwhile there. None of these seasons have come close to the hand-drawn Madhouse original season, of course. But for a little CGI series about cats, this could be pretty good. Too Many Losing Heroines is on here only because character designs by Imigimuru, who many people know for Licorice Recoil, but I know because I love Konobijutsu Niwa Mondai ga Aru. This art club has a problem, which is his wonderful rom-com manga, which had a wonderful one-core adaptation. I don't expect the story to do anything for me, but with his character designs, I'll check it out. And that's really it for the series anime. And the only things I can say with absolute certainty that I'm going to cover are Sengoku Youko and the Elusive Samurai. Although with 6 shows in the mid-table, I'm sure almost sure a couple of those at least will make the cut. And we do have several series from spring which are carrying over, like Oikanbo and Boku no Hero Academia and Yatagarasu. So there are quite a few shows carrying over. So if it does turn out to be kind of a lame season, that won't be the worst thing in the world. But hopefully we'll get at least 4 or 5 new shows that I can stick with. My sleepers, Giji Harem is the standout sleeper for me, 1000%. That's the one I have the highest sleeper vibe for. Maybe Rising Impact to an extent, and maybe the Katsute Mahou Shoujo. At a stretch, I might call that a sleeper. As for OVAs, nothing. So we'll jump right past it. I think the new normal in anime is nothing in the OVA category for me. If that changes, well, okay. But good OVAs are the exception rather than the rule in this day and age. Theatrical, though, summer is always a pretty big theatrical season, and this season is no exception. We have Bakeneko Anzu-chan, Ghost Cat Anzu, which is a French-Japanese co-production. Shine and Miu, French studio Miu, the 2 top countries in the world for animation, so that's very interesting. Was world premiered at Cannes. It's about an 11-year-old girl who goes to live with her grandfather, who is a Buddhist monk, and he puts her in the care of his Bakeneko. So we'll see how that goes. It looks a lot like Spirited Away, and I don't get the feeling it runs away from those comparisons. We'll see. The French-Japanese connection definitely interests me. There's a Mononoke movie coming out, Karakasa. I was never a huge Mononoke fan like some people, but I do recognize that it was very, very good. And it's been so long since Nakamura Kenji has really directed anything that I'm always interested to see what he does. Unfortunately, Sakurai Takahiro, who has been basically blacklisted because of his marital woes, has been replaced by Kamiya Hiroshi, which I consider to be a pretty big downgrade. The next Boku no Hero Academia movie, which is fittingly titled You're Next, it's the 4th one, seems to be the evil All Might movie. That's the impression that you get from the previews. The basic deal with Jump Kaiju series movies is they're almost never great. They usually make money. And at their best, they're, at least they capture the feel of the source material. And I think the Boku no Hero Academia movies have mostly done that, I would say. So, okay. I expect this will be good, not great. The one good thing I would say is what has happened in the past typically is that when Hiroaka has had a movie and a TV series in production at the same time, Bones has really strained under that. And the TV series has been the one that's tended to suffer. I don't see any indication in season 7 that that's happening. So far, at least, with 6 of 20 episodes in the can as I record this, season 7 seems to be doing just fine in terms of production. So maybe they learned some lessons from the first 3 and they've put them into effect here. Last up is Kimi no Iro, which is directed by Yamada Naoko, of course, who cut her teeth at Kyoto Animation. Came over to Science Saru and kind of became their top dog when Yuasa Masaki left. So Kimi no Iro, I'm not nuts for Yamada as a director. I think the hatchet job she did on Hikimonogatari speaks for itself, although a lot of that was in the writing, not in the direction. The thing I like about Kimi no Iro is it's set in Nagasaki, which I think is underrepresented in anime, and it's really a gorgeous place with a very interesting history, much of it connected with the Japanese Christianity and a lot of it tragic. And there does seem to be a Christianity element with Kimi no Iro because the heroine is attending a Christian missionary school. So that could potentially be kind of interesting. If I had a sleeper movie, it would probably be Kimi no Iro. And that wraps it up for the Summer 24 preview. As always, I thank you very much for watching. I thank you very much for reading if you read the preview post on LIA. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Stay tuned also, of course, the My Taste is Better Than Yours video/podcast series is ongoing. We have lots of interesting stuff coming up there, including an episode on Nige Jouzu, no Wakagimi, the Elusive Samurai. So look forward to that. And as always, the message I leave with you is, please, if you do nothing else today, stay frosty.